Okay, here is the third installment of the video lecture for Chapter 9, Psychology over the Lifespan. We're still talking a little bit about Piaget's theories, and I'm trying to give you the basic information so I don't really bore you too much. But this is required stuff for the course, so I'm going to try to do my best with this. Now, the last slide you saw, we were dealing with, the last slides that you saw, rather, were slides on assimilation and accommodation. So now I want to talk to you about something a little different. Object permanence. This happens during the sensory motor stage, which is the first stage of his development. This is an understanding during infancy that objects exist independently of themselves. Now we understand as adults this concept. Just because this pen right here, you can see it, but now I'm going to put it behind your back, so you have to pretend it's behind your back now. Did the pen disappear forever? No. Do you know the pen still exists? Of course you do. Just because you can't see it, you know it's there, right? Same with your car or things in your bedroom. You're sitting, let's say that you are, sitting somewhere watching this video. You can't see your car, maybe your parents or even your grandparents or something like that. You know that these things still exist, even though you can't physically see them right now. See, the pen still does exist. But it takes infants a while to grasp this concept of object permanence. For example, here's the best example I can think of. I'm laying in my bed as a 42-year-old man late at night. I've got a little nightlight on because that's how I roll, right? And I notice out of the corner of my eye, half asleep, half awake, that there's a large brown spider crawling up my wall. So I did what any 42-year-old manly man would do. I screamed like a little girl. And when I jumped up out of my bed, I looked at the wall and I couldn't see the spider. The spider was gone. Now my door was closed, so I couldn't have got out into the hallway. So do I just lay back down and think, well, the spider's gone. I don't see it, so it must not exist anymore. No, I've turned over everything in my bedroom trying to find this spider. I knew the spider was still there because I have achieved object permanence, right? So that would be an example. Same with needles. I hate needles. I've talked about this in class. People who try to take my blood, nurses, medical professionals, phlebotomists, if you will, often will tell me, well, Brandon, just turn your head and don't look. That way you won't even know that it's there. I'm thinking, the heck, I won't know it's there. I know that needle is there. Just because my eyes are closed doesn't mean that the needle is gone forever. It's still going to, penetrate my arm. Same with your money. You may not be able to see your money in the bank, but you know that it's in the bank. You know it's there. So we have achieved object permanence as adults. Same with your homes. You may not be able to see your house right now, but you know it's still there. It's not gone just because you can't see it. So, example, infant at age 4 to 8 months, if you hide her toy with a blanket, cover it up with a blanket, she will stop searching for it or grasping for it. So these infants at these very young ages who have not acquired object permanence, if you hide a toy, especially a really annoying one that makes a lot of noise, if you hide it, they'll think that it doesn't exist, and they won't look for it. However, as they get toward the end of the first stage of development, they'll start to realize that really is there. At about 16 to 18 months, infants start to realize that just because you hide something behind your back, it's still there, and they're actually going to look for it instead of just giving up on it. Symbols. Again, we talked about the using of symbols. For example, if I flip you off with the middle finger, I'm not going to do that, by the way. Everybody in this class would immediately know what that means and what that represents. But these symbols, these ideas of what things symbolize, are created together. They're socially constructed. Children start to learn that red symbolizes stop, green symbolizes go. If you put your finger up like that, like I did in the last video, or maybe do this with your hand, that means stop or wait a minute. So children start to learn that. Infants, by the age of 18 months, begin to use and become very adept or very good at using symbols. They become good at pointing at things that they want. They may not be able to tell you what they want, but they'll point to it and grunt or make some kind of noise, indicating, hey, I want that bottle, or I want that toy, or whatever it is. Infants learn to wave goodbye and hello. And they also start to engage in pretend play at the end of 18 months. Now, From ages 2 to 7, we're moving into the pre-operational stage of development, and your book talks about these terms too. Children basically are engaged in what's called egocentrism. Ego means self, centrism means centered. They're self-centered. Children are self-centered not because they're just horrible people or creatures. It's just because they have not developed cognitively enough to really understand that there are other people in the world, or to be able to empathize completely. Egocentrism is the belief that everybody sees the world exactly the way you do. Now, obviously, we all in this class realize that everybody has different religious beliefs. Everybody thinks a little bit differently about politics, sexual orientation, anything you want to throw out there, any topic. Not everybody is going to see the world just the way you do. Now, pre-operational children cannot comprehend that others differ in convictions, attitudes, behaviors, ideas, and emotions. They think that everybody ought to be upset, or everybody ought to be happy, or everybody ought to be anxious, because they are at that given time. They don't understand that yet. Something else with the pre-operational period, and the book talks about this concept, centration. This is when a child focuses upon one aspect of a problem or situation, but ignores other relevant aspects of the problem or situation. Now, the example, and this is really where the book gives you a term, is called conservation. In this stage, a child pays attention to the height of a liquid in a container, but does not pay attention to the size or diameter of the beaker or container the liquid is in. So, for example, if I can I'm going to do a little sketch to try to make this work here. Let's say that I present, and I'm not an artist, a child, that is a mug with a handle, 8 ounces of liquid. Now the child doesn't know that's 8 ounces. That's all the child sees. Okay, fine. Now, I'm going to pour this liquid into a different container. This one. Now it's a little skinnier and taller, but it still holds 8 ounces, as you can see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the child, I'll try to put these together so you can see them. There we go. Which container has more in it? If the child has not achieved conservation, the child is going to say, well, obviously this one has more in it. Well, why? Because it's a bigger container, it's taller. Well, no, but this one is shorter, but it holds more. So really, they hold the same. So once the child has achieved conservation, they will be able to tell that it's the same amount of liquid. It's just been distributed differently in a different size beaker or mug, if you will. So, also during the pre-operational period of development, children engage in animism. This is crediting inanimate objects with life and lifelike properties. For example, I remember once, I'm gonna use my daughter as an example. When she was younger, she once said to me, "The sun must be unhappy because it's a rainy and cloudy day today." Well, obviously the sun doesn't have emotions, but she ascribed human-like qualities to the sun. So she just assumed that the sun was unhappy because there was rain outside. Another example, well, Daddy's car must be mad because it won't go anywhere today. One day my car was broken down in the driveway, so she just assumed that the car was angry with me. And that's normal for a child's mind during the pre-operational period of development. Example, more with the pre-operational stage. A child assumes that John is smiling at Susie, so John must be happy, but in reality John is being mean to Susie. Another example, a piece of rubberized food looks like real food, so a child would try to bite into it. This gets at appearance as reality. A child assumes an object really is what it is supposed to be during the pre-operational stage. Even if it's fake or plastic, they'll assume that it is real. Now, there are lots of criticisms of Piaget's theory. Some estimate that some postulate that his theory underestimates cognitive competence in young children and overestimates cognitive competence in adolescence. So in other words, some people say that there are children a lot younger than, for example, than 2 to 7 years of age who can start to master these things like conservation, etc. And then you have some children who get older who have developmental delays or who have cognitive impairments who can't master conservation and can't master formal operational thought because of their impairment. Also, it's said that his theory does not account for differences in children's performance, and also that his theory is vague in reference to the mechanics of change. He sets out a theory of the change itself and the years related to the developmental stages, but what causes these things to change he doesn't really address. So these are criticisms of his theory. And I'll go ahead and stop that, the third installment of this video lecture series. Thank you.